What's up, everybody? Want to go into the topic of scent control, like serious scent control, John Eberhart style regimens of scent control. Also, I want to talk about ozonics, possibly using those in conjunction, like I have 2 years ago, and talk about some of the things that I noticed and experienced from that, and just help you try to figure out, is ozonics something that you should use? Is a scent lock regimen something that you should use, or neither? Because I think it actually varies based on the type of person and hunter that you are and what you do. So the first question that I think will help just kind of start a baseline of discussion is the question of, can you beat a whitetail's nose? There's some people that'll say straight up, yeah, you can. You got to use this, this, and this, or based off my experiences I have. Then you have other people that are like, absolutely not. You can't beat it any way, shape, or form. You guys are just, getting by because of the elements, the wind, the thermals, things that are pulling your scent away from the deer or dispersing your scent in a way so that they're not alarmed by it. Both of those answers are true, I think. When you bring in factors like wind speed, the height that you're at in a tree, the time of day that you're at, the topography, the way the wind's swirling and moving, no matter what, whether you're using scent control or not, you can get away with beating a whitetail's nose. Now, straight up, if you were to sit right next to a deer and you were to use ozonics and you were to use scent control, scent lock, and everything, and you're gonna test out to see if a deer is gonna smell you, well, I've never seen any tests of people doing that, but I bet you the deer would smell them, because I just know how freaking good a deer's nose is. Now, obviously, you're saying, well, you're never actually that close to a deer in a hunting situation, yada, yada, yada. You're right, and I think that there's a lot of things that need to be talked about with it. So there's 4 things I feel like guys are using to get by a deer's nose, and the first thing would be wind and thermals, stand height, or how high you are in relation to the deer that you're hunting, ozonics, and scent lock. So with wind and thermals, obviously we all try to play the wind and thermals. Some people will be like, well, it's not that important. Well, bucks play the wind and thermals, so yeah, there's that. Even if you don't care about the wind and thermals, you should at least care from like a hunting a deer perspective, because they're going to make moves based off the wind and thermals. So if you're going to become a good deer hunter, you want to know what the thermals are doing and what the wind is doing to know what the deer are going to do. Stand height. This is an important one, because depending on how high you are in the tree in relation to the deer, your wind will very likely blow over the deer. And I've seen a lot of people with ozonics proof, videos that show your milkweed dropping down right to the deer's nose. Well, milkweed actually has weight, wind does not. So even though your milkweed might be going and getting down to that level of that deer, your scent might not. Inevitably, the higher you are above a deer, the more likely that your scent will just blow right over the top of the deer. That's why everybody loves hunting in tree stands. You tend to have a lot better success hunting tree stands, and the guys that hunt really high up in tree stands can really get away with a lot as far as deer not smelling them. Ozonics. I've used ozonics in conjunction with scent lock. Ozonics is an amazing product. It works, but there's just certain weather conditions that it works really good in, and then there's some that it doesn't. So like, for instance, calm days where your scent is pooling in an area, it works phenomenal. I've had tons of experiences where deer are like 10 yards away from me. The wind is just barely ever so drifting in their direction, and I've got ozonics running. We're sitting down. Everything is a controlled environment, kind of. The ozonics is able to keep up with the wind dispersion, and the deer don't smell me at all. And when you have those experiences, you're like, holy crap, ozonics works. Well, as soon as the wind picks up, or you're up in a tree, your wind disperses more because it has a longer time to drift down to ground level. You get into those situations, and ozonics doesn't really cover your butt quite as much. And then you got scent lock, which obviously activated carbon it works. That's not anything to be debated. And scent lock, when used properly, can dramatically reduce the amount of scent that you are dispersing in the air or leaving on the ground. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you should do, but I'm just going to share my experience and what my decision was after a couple years of doing extreme scent control, the John Eberhart whole regimen, and running ozonics. So when I was doing all that, I was I'm a pretty obsessive person, so I was going through the whole thing. I was washing my backpack. It was the only backpack that I was using with my scent control system. It never touched any human skin. I was wearing gloves when I was dressing. Gosh, I did everything. Like, I was putting sticks, leaves, and debris into my bins, and my bins were all wiped down. They were perfectly clean. There was no scent from any foreign outside source coming in and touching my garments. Those garments were going over top of a full body scent lock suit that was I was keeping refreshed in the dryer every so often. I wore the headgear, I wore the face mask, I wore gloves. I had a special pair of rubber boots that I only wore with my scent lock stuff. I would tuck my first layer of pants into my rubber boots, my second layer of pants over my rubber boots. I would wear a gaiter that only touched non-human things. It was also in my same garment bags. I would put that gaiter over top of everything to even add another layer of protection to keep my scent from escaping down my pant leg. I did everything. And on top of doing all that stuff, I would also run an ozonics. I would run it on my backpack when I was walking into my spots, and then I would run it in my tree when I got there. So, my results. There's sometimes that it worked very well. There's experiences on the ground where I've had, at least with ozonics, where, you know, deer were 10 yards away, didn't smell us at all. And that was because of the weather conditions. It was very calm out, and the ozonics did a very good job of covering our scent disbursement fan, almost, if you will. But there's other times where I just feel like ozonics isn't really helping at all, because once your wind speed picks up, you get up in a tree, your dispersal rate is very broad. The ozonics just has a really hard time covering all that scent. Now, I use them together in conjunction and had some pretty good results. I've had deer directly downwind of me, and they've kind of noticed that I'm there, or they've noticed something's not quite right, but it hasn't caused them to spook, and they've walked past. So that can be very beneficial, especially when you have an area like mine where you have a large amount of does and maybe 1 or 2 bucks that you're after, and you have to be able to get by all those does in order to have an opportunity at that buck. So those are the pros. I want to talk about the cons, and some of those cons were just the fact that it took me forever to get all my scent lock stuff on. Probably took me at least 15 minutes once I got to my spot before I was actually ready to walk out. That was just kind of annoying, I guess. Whenever I'd go hunting with my buddies, like, they'd just be standing there waiting for me, like, you know, when are you gonna be ready? And I'm like, you know, give me a second. I gotta get all my stuff on. I gotta wear my gloves. I gotta do all this stuff. And it wasn't the end of the world, but it was definitely annoying. 2 is just the fact that you sweat. So, like, as much of this scent control stuff that you do, you're going to be walking in with your face exposed, your head probably exposed, just to try to keep your head cooled down so you don't sweat. But a lot of times you do. And so what do? Like, you can wipe down with scent lock wipes, and you try your best to soak up all that sweat. But in the end, like, when you sweat, that's just scent leaving your face. And you can wear the face mask and everything, but I've still found that when I'm profusely sweating, scent is escaping me, and I cannot control it. As much scent lock as I've tried in ozonics, when I'm profusely sweating, scent gets out. I know it does because the deer smell me. And then I guess another factor would be unforeseen circumstances. Like, for instance, I had a farmhand come up to me as I was walking out to my spot, just got all my stuff on, and was like, hey, I'm mowing this ditch. I need you to move your car. And I was like, all right. So I wasn't going to take all the time to take my stuff off. He needed my car moved. So I just went, jumped in my car, and moved it. And that just, like, dropped my overall morale so much, because I had done all this stuff to make sure that nothing was ever touching anything I was wearing, and all of a sudden I just jumped into my stinky car and I got scent all over my outer garments, and it's just like, it just sucked. Which leads to the largest con, in my opinion, which is just the overall mental effect that it has on you. So for me, I was just focused on it so much, and I was putting so much effort into being scent free, that it was really taking away from the effort and the mental energy that I should have been putting into other more important things, like, am I in the right spot? There's so many other things that affect your success way more than your scent control regimen, and all my thought process and everything was just going into scent control. So it mentally kind of bogged me down a little bit. Sometimes I'd find myself asking whether I should hunt if he wins, because I had such a good scent control system when I should have never been toying with those ideas. it took more time. It's more bulk. It's more stuff to get ready. Even carrying an ozonics out, it's a fairly small unit, but it's just another thing that you've got to bring out with you and get set up. And I think when I got to the end of that year and I looked and I said, okay, what was the number one thing that kept me from getting on big bucks? It was not my scent control system. It was bigger things like I wasn't in the right spot at the right time. I didn't have enough good intel on the area that I was hunting to make those decisions. I hadn't actually got eyes on a big buck in the area, so I didn't really know what I was working with. I wasn't doing enough in-season scouting. There's so many other really important things that I should have been doing and I wasn't. And unfortunately, we live in an industry with this hunting culture where when you're not having success, you want to blame it on something, and it's real easy to blame it on, well, I don't have this piece of gear, or I'm not doing this thing. Scent control for me was one of those things where when I wasn't having the success, I was saying, well, it's because I could be if I was just doing all these things and doing the right scent control. And you're going to find that once you do that, then something else just takes that place. And for me, it was, well, I'm spending too much time worrying about my scent control. I'm not in the right spot. I don't have the right intel. I haven't been walking around enough because I'm too worried about sweating. So you have to be able to overcome those mental barriers and realize that, hunting companies are going to want to sell their stuff to you, but that doesn't always equate to a higher success rate in the field. So what was my decision after all that? Well, even with all the success that I did have running ozonics in conjunction with scent lock, I got by a few deer's noses. There was enough bad experiences to where I just wanted to just completely give it all up, altogether, because it just was too much time. It was too much money. It was too much extra things to do that was taking away from my experience of hunting. So I ended up just ditching all of it. I sold my ozonics, I got rid of all my scent lock, and now I just go out in my work pants and a camo sweatshirt. I have way more fun. I don't worry about scent and everything as much. I focus more on my intel, on being in the right spot at the right time. I just be strategic about my wind, about my trails in and out, and I just do all that stuff. And I feel like that has helped me become a better hunter. It's helped me focus more on the wind and thermals and all that stuff that the deer also focus on. Therefore, I've just learned a lot more about deer habits. So am I bashing scent lock and ozonics and all that stuff? Not necessarily. If you hunt private land, you have a controlled setup, or you have preset spots similar to what John Eberhart preaches, then maybe having a scent lock regimen that's like crazy and all extensive and all this stuff makes a lot of sense for you. And I can see why. And if I own land and I was hunting the same type of areas fairly frequently, and I knew there was big bucks in there and I didn't want to get my scent everywhere, well then I would do this a lot more, but I just don't. I hunt a lot of public land. I cycle through areas. I don't know. I'm just not as worried about all that stuff as probably somebody else would. So that decision ultimately has to be up to you. You have to just look and see, well, what type of hunting do I do? Because if you're like me and you move around a ton, you hunt a lot of public land, there's other guys in there getting their scent everywhere, well, it might not make a whole lot of sense for you to go all out on this scent control regimen. But if you're a private land guy, this might make a lot of sense for you. So you just have to kind of examine your situation. And I guess at the end, as like a total wrap up, you kind of have to try it for yourself to figure out if this is something that you want to keep doing. And I did, and I had enough negative experiences that outweighed the positive to where I decided not to. One of those a couple years ago was I made a poor shot on a buck because I was sitting too high up in my tree. I was sitting at like 30, 35 foot up in the tree, and a buck came down right under my tree, and I just barely clipped a fold of skin under his armpit instead of smoking him, which is what I should have done. I don't think many people realize, like, your shot angles, when they change, the kill zone area gets drastically smaller and your odds of killing a deer just go down in general. That's just the facts. So while you might be having a better chance of getting by a deer's nose, you're sacrificing in other areas as well. And until you actually go and experience things for yourself, can you decide, is this worth it for me, or is this just not a good idea for the type of hunting that I do? For me, when I was running scent lock and doing all that stuff, it was causing me almost to not think about wind and thermals as much as I should have been. And when I stopped, I started thinking a lot more about wind and thermals. I've just learned stuff over the years about how deer use them and You know, when I was first starting out hunting, I had none of this knowledge. Like, I set up on this 160-inch buck that was in this piece of woods with some does. There was two sides of the woods that he could have come out into, two of these fields, and I didn't know which one he would. And so I just decided to sit on the corner and hope that he might come out on one or the other side, work towards me, and I could get a shot. Well, such a stupid move on my part, because one of the fields has a really low dip in it. All the thermals in the evening were pooling down into that dip, and that's exactly where that big buck came out with those does. And had I had that kind of knowledge about thermals dropping and how deer work low spots and stuff, then I would have sat there and I might have been able to shoot that buck. But, you know, you live and learn. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a controversial topic, super controversial. Some guys swear by all this stuff. Other guys swear totally against it. I kind of in the middle. I think it just depends on who you are and what kind of hunting that you do. But just be careful that you don't kind of impose your opinion on everybody else, because with hunting it really varies completely from state to state, from individual to individual, situation to situation. And there's some really cool tools out there, but they're not for everybody. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this kind of content, I got way better stuff than this sorry video coming your way. A whole bunch of awesome hunts coming up this fall. So subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll catch you in the next one.